has been very slow. Whilst we just wait for the social media to kick in, I got a question of you both. I was just borrowing Mark, Matt, and the in the green room about I'm a voracious listener to Times Radio, and they were talking about Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, that under this new broom, he stated that if you want to ask a question in the House of Commons as an MP, as a man, you must be wearing a tie. So on Times Radio, there's this whole debate about ties. Who wears a tie? And I was just thinking about our industry, that in the sectors that we work in, of fresh food, fresh produce, it's very rare to see a tie. But in agriculture, you still see a tie. But what's your take? Let's start with Mark. Mark, do you think that we need to wear a tie to work? What's your take, please?
Maybe not to work, but in certain occasions, I only wear. But having said that, you make a good point. The discussion group I'm a member of, it is still jacket and tie, even though it's a very informal affair. It's still a jacket and tie affair. So yeah, it still has its place, but maybe not on a day-to-day basis.
So your discussion group, Mark, if you turned up there without a tie and jacket, you would be frowned upon, would you?
Yeah. And in true British style, no one would say anything, but it would definitely be frowned upon, and the mood music afterwards would. I'd have a message before.
Yes, excellent. By letter.
Yeah.
Dear Mr. Campbell's been noted. Matt, what's your take on this? You see hundreds and thousands of people and businesses. What the tie is it an old uniform? What do you think?
I just think if you're judging someone on what they wear, you're part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'll say on it. I think ultimately you can meet some of the most great, amazing people who are not wearing ties, and you can meet some absolute horrific people who are wearing ties. I think we should be judging people on what they can offer, what their brain can bring to the argument, what they can contribute, rather than if they wear a tie. I still think there's situations where you should respect. Like if I was going into a certain situation, someone asked me to wear a tie, I wouldn't say no, because I would see that as respectful. But if this is the level of things we're worried about in the UK when we're about to go on to some really deep and important subjects, I think that we've got some deep problems.
Yeah, well done. Oh, the social media is just kicking in. I was talking to my kids about it this morning, and they said, "Father, you wouldn't be able to wear a tie anyway." And I said, "Why is that then?" And they said, "Well, we know you can't do up any of your shirts because you got more chins than the Chinese telephone directory." So I thought I'd leave it at that. Right, we're all live. Hello, everyone. My name is Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. Absolute pleasure to continue our series with the Mark, I was going to say the astounding. Let's go for the astounding AHDB on our Talking Leaders series. And today, on a match two basis, we've got Matt Phelan, CEO of the Happiness Index. Why the happiness of farmers matters. So, just for those on the podcast, let's give it a little bit of a bit more of a background. And all those who are dialed in on the likes of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, if you have any questions and on Zoom, please send them in and we'll ask them of Matt and Mark. So we know how important it is to be inspired by both big businesses and individuals, which is why we're excited to present the Talking Leaders series, a monthly initiative from the AHDB, which sees a series of inspirational speakers share their life experiences and deliver impactful stories to the AgriLeader community. In our July broadcast, we're delighted to be joined by Matt, author and co-founder of the Happiness Index. In his day-to-day role, he's responsible for the strategic direction of the business. He is the founder of the Happiness and Humans community, host of the Happiness and Humans podcast, and author of Freedom to Be Happy, the business case for happiness. Matt recently completed a TEDx talk where he presented, take a deep breath, I love this, 12 million data points in happiness from 1 million human beings in 100 plus countries in less than 15 minutes. Okay, where I think it's Mark, where I think it's inspired to have Matt on, I just did a bit of research on this, and according to Gallup's State of the Global Workplace, and Matt, you'll know this, only 15% of employees are engaged in the workplace in the Western world. Only 15%. This means that the majority of the workforce are either viewing the workplace negatively or doing the bare minimum to make it through the day with little or no emotional attachment. We all know that employees who find a passion and a purpose at work are more than 3 times as likely to stay with their organizations than those who don't. And those businesses that have an engaged team see a far better turnover, far better profitability, and far better team retention. So Matt, am I correct in my final summary there that there's so much to do within UK business, let alone UK agriculture, that we've got to create this happiness to make sure that businesses prosper? What do you think, Matt?
Well, I think for the listeners, I just want to delve into what engagement is, because employee engagement at work, and the definition that's used for the stats that you're using is what your brain needs to thrive at work. If you actually look into the happiness, the numbers are actually way worse than that. So you can be engaged at work and unhappy, but you can also be happy at work and not engaged. But generally speaking, engagement is what the company wants. So companies are worried about that because they're thinking, well, we don't have people doing the job that we're paying them for. But what the employee wants is happiness. And that's where we get into these issues around why people leave and retaining talent in certain industries and so on.
Mark, thoughts?
It's interesting in terms of that you need to get that happy blend, don't you? And like you say, companies tend to look at that engagement, that KPI and that metric without thinking about how their employees are feeling and how they're doing. Because we need to be happy, because that's what motivates us to do things in life.
So guys, I'm going to go completely off script here. There's we're coming across scenarios of contacts of ours who run businesses that they've actually created two contracts, contract A and contract B. Contract A is for those that only want to work 37.5 hours a week, don't want to get involved in any training development, don't want to get involved in any external events, fairs, promotions that the business might do. So they just come in, do the work and leave. And then they've got contract B for those that do want to prosper, who are prepared to work a little bit harder, to do work after hours to prosper themselves. Matt, help me with that one. Is that ethically right? Is that wrong? Is that where we've got to, where we're having to morph our presentation of how we bring people into our workforce?
Yeah, I feel like that's the first time I've heard of that, Max. I feel like that's the wrong answer to the wrong question.
Well done.
Which is, everyone at work is different, and we have to create an environment where people from all different diverse brain types, backgrounds, and so on can thrive in the workplace. So let's take working mums as an example. Let's say you've just got back from giving birth. Your needs might be different to a 45-year-old man that has no children. So for me, it's about needs, and it's about how do you accommodate for that to get the best out of your people. Whereas that to me sounds like a bit of a just broad stroke brush. I feel like there's more behind it. It feels like there's a bit of passive aggressiveness behind that, which I'd like to look into that a bit more.
Yeah, no, I'll happily talk to you about it. I agree with you. That's it's wrong, isn't it? You're sort of forcing a situation there. Mark, you go. I want you to roll with Matt, because I just want to hear from Matt. Mark, you go with that first point that we got on our briefing notes.
Yeah, no, it's all good, and it's great to have you back on Talking Leaders, Matt. It's been a while. So what's been occurring at the Happiness Index, and since we last spoke, probably about a year ago?
Yeah, so we've just gone past 4 million employees in our data set. So we're learning more about what makes us all tick. And one of the questions I was obviously thinking about before I came on here is, because obviously we've got this title, does the happiness of farmers matter? I think everyone listening agrees that it does matter, but it's important to get into some of the data and stats behind it, because actually it's really difficult to understand whether UK farmers are happy or not. Some people maybe disagree who speak to farmers regularly, like myself, because it only takes 5 minutes of a conversation to work out there's a lot of unhappy people in the industry. But I just wanted to pull out a stat. I think Jeremy Clarkson talked about this same stat, but only 8% of women and 12% of men reported having good mental well-being in farming.
Wow.
So when you flip it around, it's shocking, isn't it? It's absolutely shocking. So that therefore, everyone on the other side of that doesn't feel they have good mental well-being. And I just want to, for the listeners who didn't listen last time, I just want to bring in a little bit of the impact of unhappiness, because often people talk about we want to be happy, and I don't want to talk about like toxic positivity where you're forcing everyone to be happy. But I just want to take a really serious point that employees that are unhappy at work are less accurate in their task. So when you take an industry that has a really high death rate, like farming, compared to other industries, I just want to take you to another industry that to make my point, which is in the NHS, there's an incredible study for over 1 million employees that shows that employees, if you went into 2 hospitals and the 2 hospitals are exactly the same, the hospital with the unhappier employees would have a higher death rate, which often shocks people, because when they think about, they come to a podcast like this, they think, oh, right, it's going to be the soft, happy, clappy stuff. Who's this hippie that Max has invited onto the podcast called Matt Phelan, and all this kind of stuff. But when you delve into the subject, it's really serious. And one of the reasons there is accuracy of task. And if we just go back to safety in farming, think about all the operations that a farmer might do in their normal daily practice that are dangerous. Think about that. Think about the fact that you are less accurate in your task and how that can actually play through. So we're aware of the things like the mental health impact and suicide, which we'll probably go on to talk about, Max and Mark. But I just want to make that small point that this is quite a deeply important but also serious subject, even though we're going to have a bit of fun with it today.
Yeah. Oh, just going to. So that happiness element, there's Matt, there's so many elements to it, not only financially, but productively and emotionally. When we talk about this all the time, that's where the farming sector is so fragmented in comparison to other. Every business is completely different. No size fits all. So on a catch-all basis, what do you think that that farmers or farming groups or farming businesses should be looking to implement to, here it comes, create that success in this whole area of happiness, do you think, Matt?
I think the biggest thing is the re-establishment of community, because I think we spoke about it before, which is, it's like a good thing. So I come from farming, my dad's a farmer, my brother's a farmer, I still help out on the farm. But there's that saying, isn't it? You should leave your farm once a week, leave your county once a month, and leave the country once a year if you can. And I'll give you an example. There's a couple of points I want to make on this. So my dad left the country for the first time since 2007 last weekend.
No.
So we took him to where his family is in Ireland. It was like cattle HQ, so he's loving it. So there was cattle everywhere, and it's very rural. So it's not like we went to Dubai or something like that. So it's in an area he's comfortable with. But one of the areas that my brother and my dad clash, because they run the farm together, is on like creative ideas. But what I observed in my own dad when he got back, he's more open to new ideas just from getting. We were only away for 2 days, right? Because again, there'll be lots of people listening, because people who don't work in farming think that all farmers are rich. Most farmers that I know struggle to afford to leave the country because of how much it costs. So that's like a thing that doesn't really get talked about. But actually being able to take my dad away and seeing the impact it had on his relationship, and I'll get back to community, the impact it had on the relationship with my brother, who they basically work together every day. But then if you widen that out, the top driver of happiness at work is positive relationships. Now, a lot of farmers that I know, that the main relationships they tend to have is people that are coming on the farm to sell them something. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but some people play to that, don't they? So what I feel is missing, and I don't know if anyone watched it. I'm going off on a tangent here, but Danny Dyer did a great documentary on the redefining what it means to be a man, and he talked about how lots of people in the UK, and this is relevant to women as well, we've lost what we call our third space. So first space is like your family, second space is your work. Third space traditionally was the pub, but lots of areas don't have pubs anymore. They've closed down. Lots of people don't drink anymore, and all these things. So I feel like farming has lost its third space, where it can come together with people that are not trying to sell you something, that you can share ideas, thoughts, problems, and issues. So I don't have an answer on how you do that, Max, but I do think it's missing. So I think the concept of third space in farming is something that perhaps we could talk about.
What on Matt? I think it's a good segue to pump up, promote the AHDB AgriLeader Forum. We're very blessed to have you speak in, or help me, Mark, January 2023. And Matt, I was at the back with my camera kit, and I was just watching some people listening to you, and you're resonating around the same theme. And I saw two sisters, Mark, you'll know them, the ladies in the pork sector, and you said something along that line, Matt, and they both looked at each other and nodded when you were talking about community. So it's so difficult to keep that community going. But then again, whether it be like, say, AgriLeader Forum or Mark's discussion group, I suppose it's just a matter of getting out there, and also spotting when some of our friends or our colleagues, they might be a bit belligerent or a bit nervous, but actually taking them out to, whether it be a discussion group or whether it be a trip to somewhere gorgeous like Ireland, just to get them out of their comfort zone so that they can they can readjust and reset. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And if you look across the industry, there are some really good communities, but for some people, it's interesting. I was on farm last week, a very, very progressive beef business, very well-known individual. And we interviewed both the son, who's now taken over the business, and the father. And the father has been very, in terms of succession, he handed the keys to the business over about 15 years ago to the son, which is, if we're honest, in the industry is quite rare. The son is very outward looking. He's involved in lots of other projects and committees and things outside of farming to bring that information back. We then talked to the father and he said, I'd never ever do anything like that because it wasn't deemed to be the right thing to do, and I didn't like doing that stuff. But looking at his son, he said what that's brought to the business and brought to him and given him that space, like he'd gone off to LA and out to the Nevada desert, go skydiving for 2 weeks, which is like, wow. And that was an important part of his getting off the farm and doing something very, very different. I think there's definitely pockets out there, and there's some great communities. Like I said, we've got a great discussion network, but there are a strong proportion of farmers that are in the father's camp that don't see the benefit or have the inclination to get involved in these kind of communities, which is hugely important.
Yeah, and James, just to grab the conversation, I think where it's again very inspired to have Matt on. Matt understands farming. Matt is very well travelled and has met a number of businesses and done a lot of positivity, inputted a lot of positivity into those businesses. Matt, just give us an understanding. What inspired you to focus on happiness within the world of work, so we can learn from you?
Yeah, I was running my first business, and we were growing it, and we hit really stressful periods of time. And I'm just quite a curious person, and there is a link to farming here, which is if you're growing anything, you're a bit obsessed with the inputs. Like you're obsessed with like what something needs to grow. And when you come out of that world and you start to run like what you'd call a normal business, I think I kept that mindset. Like you're looking at your employees and you're thinking, what do they need to grow? Like what do they need? Because with most things in farming, there's a good record of an understanding of what, like, for example, what wheat needs or what peas need or what animals need. But actually for human beings, we're not very good. And we've got this sort of like old leadership mentality passed down from generation to generation. And I started to question that when I started to see actually people really stressed, people leaving. And also it was not fun for the leader as well. It's not fun for you if you're running a business where everyone's unhappy. So we just started collecting data and looking at the inputs, and actually when I'm outside of the world of farming, I'm in my normal world, I actually say to people, you need to think like a farmer. Like what I say is like farmers don't stand in the middle of, well, some do, but most farmers don't stand in the middle of the field and tell their plants to grow. It's not gonna have an impact. And that's kind of like what happens with employees. People kind of just tell them to be happy or just get on with it and all this kind of stuff. But actually, if you think of things more like farming, it changes the whole way you think of yourself as a leader.
Yeah. Okay. So on that side, what are some of the key factors that you believe significantly can impact the happiness, and what could farmers learn from this? What are those big dials that you feel that businesses that farmers could turn to benefit them?
So I'll give you one that I've had so many people contact me since the AHDB.
Have you? Oh, right.
Yeah, so many people. And the one that came up, this doesn't come up if you're in like manufacturing, or if you're in IT, or this particular, so one of the top 4 drivers of happiness is acknowledgement. But farmers generally, so I just gave an example of how like family farms, like it can, a parent can be really bad at saying to their child who's come into the farm, "You've done a good job." Like that language can be quite difficult. And I was quite surprised being there at that event that so many people come up to me and said, I might try and say something nice to my child or my colleague. And so many people said, no, I've never even had a compliment from the people I work with. And these are seen as like tiny things, but they do matter. It's a top, like acknowledgement is a top 4 driver of happiness. It's like what makes us feel alive. So that was one that I don't know if anyone mentioned that to you, Mark. I'd like to bring you in on that one. That seemed to really strike a conversation, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because it's such an easy thing to do, and I think intentionally within the industry, no one intends not to acknowledge staff, peers, whatever that be, but they don't naturally do it, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to be disrespectful for anyone, but yeah, just saying thank you or saying well done or that was a really good idea. It, like you say, it goes a long way.
Guys, do you think it's a generational thing that my mother, she occasionally gets embarrassed when I say, "Mother, I love you," and she finds it quite difficult sometimes. It's either because she doesn't love me, or it's just that generation that doesn't want to do it. But Matt, do you think this? It's a bit like the Thai conversation we were having earlier when we were warming up. Do you think this is something that will just fall by the way, that we will be more appreciative of each other, whether it be a son daughter relationship, or your foreman or your spray driver or your dairyman? That did you think, Matt, things will change on that side?
I think there's a generational thing. I also think there's a social class thing as well.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of farmers that parents went to private school, and I think that era of private schools, there was a lot of people who went away, and they weren't really taught to hug each other, to have that connection. So I'm part of the 93% club, which is 93% club is people in the UK that went to state school, but we're really underrepresented in leadership roles. So I think leadership roles make up about 50% of people from private schools. So I'm not here to say private school's right or wrong, or state school's better or whatever. But I do think that I think there's a diversity of where people who are leading farms come from, which is something that we've talked about before. And I do think there's people, and I've been on to other podcasts where they're talking about, we were just taught not to hug our parents, we'd shake our parents' hand. That's another one on the Thai thing, which for me seems a completely alien thing. But I've got friends that went to private school that will say that they've only ever shook their dad's hand, which to me, wow, as a dad who hugged me and as a parent myself, it seems so alien to me. So I think there's a whole melting pot in there. But I think the generational thing, Max, to your point, is probably the strongest driver.
Yeah, but this will shock you. I know a number of people will know this, but in a lot of French businesses, everyone in the morning, they all kiss, man to man, man to lady, because that's what the French do. So, Mark, should we do that next time we meet up? Should we kiss?
Whatever, Max. But it's interesting the point that you make, Max, because I'm just thinking of my family, and my wife's from the Channel Islands and Guernsey and been out there recently, and her cousin's daughter, who went to private school, she calls her dad by his first name. And my son, who's 16, found that really odd.
Yep.
That she referred to her father as Martin and not Dad or Daddy or however she wants to. And yeah, that's just got me thinking that. And
Matt, on that side, sorry, Matt, on that side, agriculture, farming, and the other industries that you're involved with, in the terms of the happiness index, where do we rate? Are we in front of everyone else, or are we very unsophisticated behind everyone else? Where are we? Tell us.
So Mark and I have a potential conversation that we want to have with you, Max, that we want to come back on. The sad reality is there's not enough data in farming. It's not collected. So it comes back to the question of, does the happiness of farmers matter, right? So we all, I think everyone listening will agree it does matter. However, it doesn't matter to the point where there isn't enough data. There are these studies around, and you quoted some, Max, at the beginning. I've quoted some, but for it to be statistically significant, there isn't enough. And I think by the time perhaps we might catch up for a third episode, I think we're talking about Mark and I teaming up on that, because next time I come back on, I'd like to get more into the specific farming data. But I think it's telling itself, because even the podcast is, does the happiness of farmers matter? The real honest answer is we don't know. Wow. And I'm from the happiness index and I don't know. We've got a bit of data and I've had a look at it, but what that means is there isn't a focus on it, which it comes for some of the reasons we've discussed. People not thinking it's important, it's a soft metric, all this kind of stuff. But if you go back to the NHS study, this is deadly serious stuff. So I think maybe as a trio, this isn't something we discussed before the podcast, but I think this is something we could potentially put right in the industry between us.
Yes, and I've been to some 18 conferences this year in ag and fresh food, and they're all talking about, here we go, AI, government changes, political changes, crop agronomy. No one ever talks about people, and it's the most important. And I think Mark is so bored of me saying this, that and I must use it on the last broadcast. The best thing about running a business is employing people. The worst thing about running a business is employing people. But to have that that data in perhaps I'm just simplifying it, but it'd be quite an easy fit. There's so many data systems out there collating all that data, but just to have a page on the team, you inputting the data, give us your input, and presumably Matt, Mark, that could all be set up on a confidential basis, and then Matt, you get that information. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm ahead of you to see how that could be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think the States in the US, they are pushing ahead on this a bit more. So there's a research study out there that shows farmers in fields on average are happier than desk-bound workers, which is an interesting point. But there's just not enough of it. There's these like separate little studies around there, and it would be great just to get into it and know once and for all.
Yeah,
I think you're right. And I think there's definitely, if we look, the conversations like Matt, you say, there's not a huge amount talking about people, but if you look at the industry now, whenever I talk to farmers, the first thing that comes to mind is the weather. And then the second thing is I'm really struggling to employ people. Well, there's that tenuous link between employing people and actually having a better understanding of this area and this field to actually fill those voids and actually not have a recruitment or retention problem, have people that are happy and staff that then lead to more productivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there definitely is a shift within the industry for the appetite for this kind of stuff moving forward.
And again, I know we touched on this last time, but again, it's like, I think farming understanding like it's what it's got to offer, because there's so many research bits around there around like how important it is for us to be in nature, how important it is to be outside, and how unhealthy it is to sit at a desk all day and be at a laptop. So farming has so much as a package to offer, but outwardly it tends to only share like the bad parts of it. And that's kind of what you read about. And what I would say is I do think things like Instagram have been a positive. So I do think there's individual farmers, especially female farmers, that have done a good job of showcasing that actually farming is something that women can go into, and it can be positive and so on. So I think the word is getting out, but it is still a bit of a kept secret, because you tend to only ever read the bad stuff.
Yeah, I think you raise a really important point there, Matt, about understanding, and I think that's just the challenge. It's something that a subject, a topic, an area that doesn't fall naturally. If we look at what UK farmers do in terms of the solution, in terms of solving the climate crisis, in terms of producing food in efficient, effective manners at massively high quality, that's what we're really, really good at. Because we understand that, and we know the lie of the land, and we understand production systems. The issue is the understanding in terms of how us as human beings tick and function, because that doesn't come naturally and hasn't come from the hereditary passing down the generations, etc., etc. So I think
sorry, Mark, Max, have you been watching Race Across the World at all?
My kids have. Go on, Matt. Go on.
Series 2, they race through South America, right? And there's a kid in it. He's doing it with his mum, and he has ADHD. But basically, the premise for those who haven't watched it, they're racing from checkpoint to checkpoint, but they've got a limited budget. So as they go along, they have to work as well. And one of the kids who's got ADHD, he worked twice in environments that he hasn't worked in before, which are very what you'd describe as manual type jobs. And he talks about how good that is for his ADHD to burn off his excess energy that he feels he has. And again, I just found it fascinating to watch, because they actually end up losing the race. Sorry, spoiler alert, because they want to stay on this like farm halfway through the race that they just fall in love with. But again, the understanding of like what makes us tick, and the understand like of things like ADHD and so on, like farming offers so much more to a more diverse group of people than we ever knew or understood. And when I watched that, I thought that was fascinating, because that's not necessarily something that would ever be talked about in the separate communities.
Guys, can I just try to link this all in? I don't know if you know, there's a global shortage of photography of people working in fields in the respect of agriculture, whether that be America, South America, UK. Here, there's just a global shortage. So no one's taking any pictures of people working in fields. So you extrapolate that. So there's just general shortage of photography of farming. And you oh God, Max, we're going with this one. You could think that if we could create more interest in that area, but also build in this, help me, Matt, this survey of everyone within farming, say in the UK, of how are you feeling on this happiness index, as per produced by Matt and the Business and Happiness Index, and it would get people to positively think and actually start to engage and want to see the results, and then you could come out with a yearly survey on. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, no, huge opportunities, and I'm thinking in terms of the point you made about ADHD there, Matt. It's flipping the thinking and actually celebrating diversity and difference, and how different people can fit into a business and actually benefit that. And yeah, it's all interesting. And yeah, we need a lot more photos of the world of agriculture. So opportunities there.
Yeah, Matt, can I just jump in? Quick question, John Kent. This all sounds great. How can I convince my father and my uncle that we need to explore happiness within our workforce? I know we sort of covered that earlier, but I think we need to reiterate it to drive it home. Go.
So I think sometimes it's not happiness is a word that puts people off. So you don't need to go and speak to people about happiness, because some people, they just have this preconception that it's not important, that it's fluffy. So if you think about some of the drivers like acknowledgement, relationships, creativity, like I'm sure if you speak to these people and you ask them questions about what they think is important, you'll get some of the strands that come out, and then you can latch onto that and then link the two, because that's what it's all about. Is people think happiness is over here and productivity is over here and so on. But just to give people a bit of an example, people who are happier at work are more productive. So someone might think, well, that's the fluffy stuff, but I'm just going to talk about productivity and yields. Where actually they are related. So I would say happiness is because when Mark and I did the event together, I wish we'd had a camera on the audience as much as on the people on stage, because lots of people started like this.
No, love it. Yeah,
like that, literally like that. And then as things went on, you could, and some, let's be clear, there was probably still 10, 15 that were like that at the end. But you could see people's body language changing, and as you said, like the two sisters were nodding at each other. You could see it change, and then and people even came up to me and they were like, Matt, when I heard you were talking about happiness at a farming conference, I thought this was just a load of BS and all this kind of stuff. But then people come up to you, and then you've started a conversation. So perhaps send them this podcast.
Yeah. Excellent. And do you think the likes of John and Ked, over and above sending the podcast, do they need to get a consultant in? I hate that word. Do they need to get a Matt in? Like if they had a planning issue, they get a land agent in, or do you think they just need to be curious and look at your website, look at YouTube, dial into various podcasts, and just be brave and look to create their own solution? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I just think you just need to learn and read and podcast, whatever your thing that you enjoy doing. If it's podcasts, if you listen to this, you probably enjoy podcasts. So I've got a podcast called Happiness in Humans.
Yep, sign up. Yep.
You definitely don't need to bring a consultant in. If you work in farming, message me and I'll send you a copy of my book. I'll do that as a commitment to farming. And there's some stuff in there from outside of the world that might just start some conversations. The fact that we're even talking about this today is part of the start, but there is so much information out there that's available for free. There you
go. keep go, Mark, hold them up. There we go. Happiness.
Yeah, if you send Mark or Max a message and say with your address, we'll get a book sent to you.
Yeah, and just think, I think we're definitely onto something here, guys. And rather than just trying to go to directing at John. It's a technique that's quite often used in retail within fresh foods. If you can influence the retailer, say on a new technical accreditation, they'll then positively influence their supply base. Could we not influence, I don't know, the ag chem companies, the grain businesses, the trade groups, that they need to adopt this more so that as well as promoting whatever they do, let's promote. If it's okay to use the terminology, happiness within our industry. Look at these podcasts, either that they've created themselves or that they can deploy from yourself, Matt. Do you think that's also an idea to go to those top trade group suppliers and sort of sell from the top down?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there isn't going to be an industry, is there? That's the reality of it. If we don't solve these issues like well-being and mental health and happiness, there isn't going to be an industry for those companies to sell into. So It is in everyone's interest to solve these issues.
Yeah. And have you have you got examples within other organizations, within other sectors that you think are really bossing this, really doing it well? And for you just to talk through them so we can learn from them, learn their best bits.
Yeah, I think rather than industries, it's really leaders. So you can get an industry that some people say, oh, that's terrible. But then it just takes one person, one leader, one company to go, you know what, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. And then suddenly everyone goes to work there, or they retain more talent, and then the story gets out and then people start replicating it. But I'll give you a personal story around like getting different types of employees in. We were working with a company that they struggled to understand the importance of flexi working. So they thought this is just like, they're seeing all the data that introducing flexible working is good for the workforce, all the things that we've talked about previously, like productivity, retaining staff, happiness, all these things. But they just weren't getting it. And there's loads of research studies on why flexible working is so powerful. But it took one piece of data of that they were basically struggling to retain women aged 25 to 40. And even though they had seen this, they weren't bringing in flexible working. But within the data, there was just one comment from one of their employees that said, I can't be a mum here. That's all it said. So they took that one thing and they showed it to the CEO, and then it became personal, which links us back. I know you thought you were going off on a tangent, Max, but it links back to your point around the photographs and photography. If you hear this stuff, like these stats that we said, that only like 12% of people in farming think they've got good mental well-being, it has to be personal. People have to hear stories around them from their community. So from my perspective, to answer your question, the leaders that do it really well, they get the data and then they turn it into stories that are relevant to the people in their organization. So I think the answer to this, and Mark's organization does this really well, and your podcast does this, Max, we need to start getting the stories out, positive and negative. And we need to start talking about individuals and people. And that I think that's why a lot of people in farming do actually like Jeremy Clarkson for all his things, is because he's just saying it as it is. He's telling the story, but we can't rely on Jeremy Clarkson to tell the story. There has to be more people out there that are on the front line saying, you know what, I changed this, and actually people were happier, and it was a good thing.
Yeah. The two words that come to mind my end have been be human and be authentic. And if I could just give you my anecdote, this is a number of years ago, but there was a CEO of a major retailer in the UK, and I won't name the retailer, and they had an underperforming store in the M25 corridor somewhere, and this CEO went out there personally, got the store manager, before looking around to see what the issues were, dragged the store manager out to his car that he parked in a disabled spot and said, if you work as bloody hard as I do, you'll get one of these, as he pointed out his red Ferrari. That message got back to the board of that particular retailer, and that individual was gone within a month. If you look back to present day, say someone like Professor Ken Sloan, principal of Harper Adams, if you follow him on the likes of LinkedIn, what an amazing human being. You could just see, and I've interviewed him a number of times, you could just see he's so generous in what he does and how he presents himself, his colleagues. It's all about his colleagues, and also Harper Adams University. Other universities are available, and also I forgot his surname. Stuart, the CEO of M&S, is very, very similar in that he takes a regular time out to visit the stores and visit the colleagues, and it's all about the colleagues and then what they're offering the consumer. So yeah, my words of the year, I think, a bit about being human and being authentic, and then people will be happy to work for you and be happy themselves and be more productive. Go on, Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think I agree with all of those points. And I think it's not suddenly, it's small steps, it's little things. It's not massive leaps to changing whatever to actually start on this road to be more inclusive and understand and your teams more, which will benefit happiness. But I just want to roll back to the point that you made about influence and people. If we look at like a lot of the ag companies, and a farmer, whether you're an arable farmer or a livestock farmer, some of the trusted individuals in that business are your vet, your agronomist, the people that do come onto farm, which might work in a bit more of a larger, more corporate organisation, which some of this stuff will be already filtering down. It's to try and get some of that influence from those individuals to actually start farmers on the journey. And also, not to want to plug, but we've got the labour life cycle, which is a load of resources and templates, with not directed at happiness, but it'll help you better understand your employees and take you through that cycle of how to manage, develop, recruit, retain, and progress those individuals. So yeah, take a look at the labour life cycle on our website.
And Mark, on that point, I was thinking about delivery drivers. Like, delivery drivers in agriculture are sometimes the only people who actually interact with people working on the farm, and might be the only person in a week or a month that actually asks that person, how are they? So it's just a reframing of it, isn't it, really? Because obviously their job is to deliver stuff, but actually they do more than that. And understanding that and training everyone on that, the importance of talking to the people you're delivering to, like, it has a positive impact on all sides.
Definitely, and there will be so many farmers. I look at I've got a little dairy farm in the village, and the tanker driver who comes every other day will get a cup of tea and have it, because it's that person, that interaction from outside of the business that they can chew the fat, and that person's probably got quite a bit of power and influence, as you say, over that individual.
Mark, do you want to just go for the question from Kaz, because that's quite an interesting one?
Yes. Thanks, Kaz. How do you become more included at work, and where is a culture of exclusion? And it's very hard. It's very hard to be happy if you're not included in a team. Try hard.
So basically, if you're in a negative atmosphere within a team, Matt, so we're getting down into bare bones here. How do you prove that? If you feel that you're being isolated within a business, but you want to stay there, Matt, what would your, because we're talking quite high level stuff here, but what do we actually do in respect of practicalities? What do you think, Matt?
Yes, we look at the data behind diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and without going too much into the geeking out, belonging is actually the key here. Like, belonging has the first impact, because yes, we want to increase diversity and inclusion, but that doesn't happen unless people feel they belong. So again, I feel like in that example that Kaz is using, there has to be a way of opening up that conversation around how people feel. And again, some people are scared of that conversation. So I think perhaps sharing information, starting conversations. Sometimes people who exclude people don't realise, and they don't realise what they're doing, and they've never had someone to explain, like, this is how it makes me feel when you do that. But we don't know the culture of that environment. We don't know how that's going to be received. So it's easier said than done. But perhaps trying to take some of those people away from the situation and train them on some of these examples would help.
Yeah, and Kaz, Matt, Mark, can I just give you an example that I'm using quite a lot now? Patagonia, the clothing company, Mark has got all of their kit. So they're nearly $1 billion sterling turnover globally, and they employ huge numbers of people. They don't have an HR department. They don't have an HR director because they don't have any HR problems, because it is a very much a community-led organization. If you look at them, the owners actually given the business to the employees, and when they have a recruitment need, they just ask the teams, and they've got so many people through their own community that want to come and join. They sort of get self-vetting. So Kaz, we don't know anything about your scenario, but there's such a war on talent out there that there might be, if I'm allowed to say, better businesses out there for you to be aligned to be happy. But as Matt says, investigate first, because there might be a solution within your own business that you could be quite proud to set up. But Jess, I suppose that also comes on to something about how businesses present themselves, because we all talk about staff retention and how it's so difficult to get people. Those businesses that adopt, Matt, what you're basically inferring, are going to find it so much easier to bring people into their business, and also to retain people. Because if you've got a happy workforce, and they're saying, "Oh my God, you must come and join us," it'd be brilliant. Because I've been here 5 years, and Matt, do you think that that's another element that we must talk about? That happy business finds it far easier to bring people in, and far easier to hold them for the long term.
Yeah, and I think this is what, there's a lot of this debate around the different generations, but this is what I think the Generation Z are doing positively, and people don't see it as positively right now, because Generation Z are doing different things and saying different things. But the new generation won't tolerate toxic work environments. They will walk with their feet. And it's easy to say, well, in our day, we'd have done it like this, we'd have done it like that. But the new generation have access to technology. They can go and work in New Zealand if they want, and they can find out that pretty quickly, whether there's a job for them or whatever. So I think we have to look at employees from a competitive environment. Like, we have to compete with other industries, with other countries, and so on. So just like we in our world, we have to think about customer experience. You have to think about the employee experience. In Kaz's example, there is no downside to inclusion, to helping making people feel included, and take it out of work and forget the buzzwords. Just think about your friendship group. There is no downside to making someone feel involved and feeling included and feel like they belong. Like, people are scared of these words, but there is no downside to it.
Yeah. And on a recruitment perspective, it annoys me sometimes when I see adverts that people have just got a job description and posted that out as so it doesn't excite anyone. I know other businesses that when they interview someone for the first interview, they're just telling the person, the candidate, what they do, how they're formed, what they do as a business, and then they openly state to them, right, there's 25 people working out there on the trading floor or downstairs. Go talk to any of them for 10-15 minutes. And that's such a brave thing to do. But they're so, well, not confident sounds egotistical. They're just so happy with the way that they've set up their business that they know that if John, who's looking for a potential role, goes and talks to Marjorie is going to say very, very human or authentic things about businesses. So it's got, bringing people into your business can't be transactional, like just posting up a job description. You've got to present to them why they will be happy to come and work for their business,
and also why they might be unhappy. And I think that the interview process should always be a two-way process. Like, I like to tell everyone all the bad stuff about the happiness index as well, because you want to establish that up front early, because you don't want someone to join and then go, oh, I didn't realize we don't stop when it rains. Like, it's better to just get all that stuff out on the table, because Well, it's one, hiring people, but it's really costly if people leave in the first like 6 months. So it's better to just get it all out there and say, this is what's great about working here. These are the things that we can't control. Like we're based in this area, this is a mountainous area. Like there's going to be a lot of times when it's going to be really cold, and all these kind of things. It's better to get that stuff out there.
Yeah, that's no way to talk about Sussex, by the way.
Yeah, it's a beautiful county.
Yeah.
Building on that, Matt, and you've touched on it as well. Technology. The world is driven by technology, and you've touched on it. We're talking about Gen Z, and the world is not a very big place anymore. How do you see that playing to try and improve and enhance happiness in farmers, and assessing that moving forward?
Well, I think happiness is one area that is kind of untouched in one way, because if you look at all the drivers of happiness, and again, like I said, we need more data on farmers. And I'm happy to go out on a limb and say this: I don't believe that farmers have different brains than everyone else. Like I'm happy to make that shout out there, despite what people may think from outside the industry. So if we take what we know about the human brain and the human body, it has not changed. What makes us happy has not changed in the last 1,000 years. So what we need isn't changing, but technology is allowing access that can deny it and allow it. I'll give you an example. I met a Dutch entrepreneur recently and realized that the cost of university is spiraling and that it's not going to be a choice for many students. But actually, working in different places, in different locations, is as an education as going to university. This is his view, which I happen to agree with. But what his view on it is, he's creating this social network where people can share around different workforces around the world. Now, imagine that workforce. This is a huge global workforce that can be accessed by farming, by manufacturing, whoever. Now, in that, people are going to be sharing whether working for this farm or working for that agricultural industry is good or bad. So you have to realize that the way that you treat people is part of your brand. And if it's bad, people are not going to come and work for you. So it's no point sitting there going, well, people don't want to work anymore. We can't find the workers. Because at some point you've got to question, are we actually putting out the right environment to attract the right people? Because the best people are going to be able to pick where to go. And that puts the onus. I just think you just flip it around and just think, how do we make this the best place to work? And then the best talent will come to you. If you're not focusing on that, what you'll probably get is not the best people. And then you'll be sitting there moaning, saying, oh, we can't attract the right talent. There's not enough people that want to work it anymore. All these kinds of things that you hear. And I'm sure there's an element of truth in it. But once you flip it around and make yourself the best place to work, and I'm not talking about money, by the way, that's a separate issue.
No. Yep.
When you look in the data, it's very rarely money comes up. Obviously, people want to negotiate the best salary they can, but very rarely when it comes to happiness, does money come up in the data.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jen, so we're just coming up to our witchy now. I've loved this. I've got so many things I want to further talk about, but Matt, here we go. I'm going to give you a proverbial magic wand, and you're going to use it to create the success of happiness within the farming sectors in the UK, using everything that you know personally, everything within your business, the happiness index. How are you going to use this power within this magic wand? What success are you going to create for us all?
It's a very simple power, and everyone can do this, and it's called a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, which is sit down with the people around you. It could be your team, it could be your employees, it could be the farmers, and just sit around and talk about this. Ask this question that Max asked at the beginning: is the happiness of farmers important? But just put away your embarrassment that this is a fluffy type thing. So my magic wand would be take away the theory that this is fluffy, and just get people around the kitchen tables, having a cup of tea, talking about it and taking it seriously. That's all I think that needs to happen. I think you will be surprised with the improvement.
Yeah, I think a cup of tea and a bag of donuts with a team on a Friday morning. Mark, what do you think? Because we're going to give you the magic wand as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it is just being brave to talk about a subject that maybe doesn't come naturally, and be around a cup of tea, around the table. And I like Matt says, you'd be very surprised at hopefully what comes out.
Yeah, so you just got to be brave. But those that are brave always prosper. Mark, are you going to wrap up for us?
Yeah, no, and this hour has just whizzed past, and we could probably go on for another hour. And definitely we'll look into some other work and some other pieces that we can have Matt back on to hopefully improve the data set. But the three things that I've written down on my bits of paper, and the first quote: unhappiness equals less accuracy in tasks, which then I put equals negative outcomes, which could be death. Now that's massive. Absolutely massive. And if we look at the challenges we've got with health and safety, or all the other kind of things, recruitment, retention, that's a real key to why we should be looking into this. The top four things of why people are unhappy at work and across the board is acknowledgement. So that's an easy fix. It's just to be pay into a bit of people's lives and say thank you, or ask how they're doing, or ask for their opinion. And like you said, we probably need to mine a bit more data on this to have a bit more of an understanding of how we can tactically address this within the sector, which have a massive impact. But yeah, let's see what's this space, and hopefully we'll have Matt on in a year to share some results and some data of what we found.
Matt, anything from you to wrap up a really interesting conversation?
I just want to touch on the point we were talking about, embarrassment and conversations to talk about. And this is totally sideways point, but I think you'll be happy that I'm sharing this. Just want to point out the work of organisations like Prostate Cancer UK. And it's something my dad said, who's a farmer. So my dad went through the treatment recently and he's okay and he's recovered. But he knows two farmers that had the same symptoms as him that didn't go and get themselves checked, who are now not going to recover from it. But I just wanted to quote something that my dad said about it. He said, some UK farmers are dying because they're embarrassed.
Yep.
So go and get yourself checked.
Yeah, well done. And guys, just to wrap up, I've got a 16-year-old in a sugar beet field in Suffolk pulling sugar beet bolters, and they've had the boss out there helping, and they've had this on because my son, I think he wanted to hear me embarrass myself, and was listening to the content. And so there's a couple of things that the manager's going to have they're going to have a meet tomorrow with everyone, a cup of tea and a bag of donuts from Budgeons, just to talk about things, which is amazing. And two other things from them. Who's got the squeaky chair?
Sorry, that's me.
That's Mark. And who? What are our favourite ties? Coming back to the start of the conversation, we were doing. If those who just joined in early, we're talking about how House of Commons, you can only get a question answered if you're wearing a tie, and we were just saying our tie's outdated. Matt, describe your favourite tie.
Oh, I'd have to go. I'm a women's football coach. So I'd have to go something like the Lionesses, because I like to remind everyone.
That's
although England men lost the Euros final, England women are still champions of Europe. So please keep the faith. So I'd have a women's a Lionesses tie.
Fantastic, Mark.
Oh, mine's as leery as possible. The brighter the colour, the better. My favourite one at the moment is a big glarishly orange one.
Is it with any logos on?
Orange stripes, no logos, but as garish and as I love colour. This
is like a bad Friday evening disco, guys, that we're creating here. Everyone, I think we'll leave it at that. Matt, you're phenomenal. If you don't already, Mark, get ready with the books, please. If you're not already dialed into Matt's podcast and the social media of himself personally, or the Happiest Index, and get his book, March off those books. Just let me spotlight you. There you go. Well done, team. You're brilliant. That's it. Have a good week.
Have a good week. Thank you all. Bye.